Welcome once again to the Nosebleed Section podcast. This is episode 5. We're going to be talking postseason. Once again, I'm your host, Lou. My co-host, YJ.
What's up?
We are doing another video podcast. This is how we're going to try to do this from now on. And it's been a minute since we've been with you guys, but we're gonna go. Last time we talked about the stretch run. Now we're into the postseason.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about the postseason. So, all right, I guess we're already in the middle of postseason. The best thing to do is just start right from the beginning, and we're gonna start from the wild card games. All right, so
Crazy.
you know, man, we're both Mets fans, so let's start there, man. What'd you think?
Well, we talked about it in the last podcast. It was kind of, the one team that was going to be a problem was the Giants. And I actually, it was questionable whether they'd make it or not. They got I don't know how a team that had that kind of run, that kind of record after the All-Star break is able to make the playoffs.
They were awful.
It's so
the
bad.
Cardinals were awful down the stretch, though. Like, they blew it.
Too. Yeah, so they all blew it. But the one thing about them is they had that pedigree. They had players that have won. They're the kind of team that you just did not want to see in that game. And as much as they were playing probably worse than anybody else in the league, I definitely wanted to see St. Louis more than them. Then you throw in the Bumgarner factor, which was always scary in the back of everyone's head. And you think about how Mets can't do left-handed pitching.
It's why baseball's not a one-game sport. It's why it's not a one and done. And actually, I don't know how you feel about it. I actually like for the wild card teams to be one and done. It does it adds desperation, and it keeps a lot of teams involved. I don't want to see like them go to a 5-game series. I think it does put emphasis on winning the division, because you don't want to play a one game, because anything can happen in a one game scenario. Anything, like baseball is that random. So
yeah. And that's the best part. It's kind of like trying to juggle two things that are kind of opposites. You want that fight to win the division, whereas before you saw it in the 90s, teams would just get in the wild card and basically, they were in the same level playing field as the team that won the division. And, you get a Florida Marlins, you get teams that go in, the teams winning from the wild card, and it was like, hey, why do I care about the division? I'm just going to rest my pitchers down the stretch. I already clinched that. So
especially if they're going up against a team in a weak division.
Yeah,
they don't want to be the other division winner,
No, exactly. So you get all that. So the wild card solves that, which is good. But then on the flip side of that, you get these one and dones, which are crapshoot games of a team like you get the Giants. The Giants take away Bumgarner, they're not very good. Although I didn't think that Cueto would pitch a good playoff game for some reason. He's one of those guys that it doesn't shock you that he's going to pitch well in the playoffs. But you get the one and done, you got to deal with that to have the division races. So it sucks. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could do it the best of 3. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I prefer. I mean, I just prefer it being one and done. It really makes you, because first, you're facing desperation mode. So the two teams are going at it, and it's like a game 7. It's live or die. So you're gonna get the best of everything. And if you don't want to face that, you got to win your division. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's simple as that. And this is what. How did you feel with the Mets going in that game? Did you feel confident?
I felt slightly confident, but the Bumgarner thing was a big deal to me. I knew he'd pitch well, but I thought Syndergaard would pitch well too, which he did. He was brilliant. I mean, he was as good as you could possibly be in a losing playoff game. If you really think about it, put 10 Ks, 7 innings, and
the funny thing is my take on it was that I thought Bumgarner and Syndergaard were going to be a wash, and I felt that if we could get. It sounds ridiculous because it actually went the other way, is that when it got to a battle of bullpens, we would come out on top, because the San Francisco Giants bullpen's been atrocious. Yeah. And Bochy just refused to go to them. He probably would have pitched Bumgarner 10 or 11 innings if he could have.
I thought about it. And it's funny, as that game was going on, I'm sitting in the 6th, 7th inning, and we're watching the Bumgarner pitch count. And, he had all those innings where he threw 10 pitches, 12. He had the first 4 innings were a joke. I mean, they couldn't. I mean, but he throws first pitch strikes, and that's going to happen. Guy throws first pitch strikes. It's hard to sit there and take pitches. You're 0-2 in the count. Mets hitters, they're trying to not fall behind against the Bumgarner. He's one of the best I've ever seen in the playoffs at throwing first pitch strike. He gets strike one like it's nothing, and that's how you keep a pitch count down. He's smart. He knows how to pitch. And he goes through, and the battle became all right. Syndergaard's going to be out of here in the 7th. I know that. But I felt like, okay, we could get with Reed and Familia. My goal was to get Bumgarner out by the 8th, where you're getting into the 9th, where Familia pitches the top of the 9th, and then they got to have a Sergio Romo or whoever else they're going to bring in after that come in the bottom of the 9th, and you can win the game there. So it kind of went sort of according to – I mean, we had to go 2 relievers to their Bumgarner. We had to go Reed and Familia, and Bumgarner got through the 8th. Once he got through the 8th, I thought, okay, he's probably going to pitch the 9th. I mean, I didn't think there's any reason why he wouldn't. We had to clear that one Familia inning. We had to get Reed, Familia, and then it was either going to be Familia again or someone else, and then you have a chance to win that game like 10, something like that. But, the pitch count screwed them.
Now, let me ask you this. Just real quick, 2 questions, then I want to move on to the other game. Do you feel that Collins not letting Syndergaard go out for the 8th is a direct result of his maybe mistaken judgment in last year's World Series with having Matt Harvey go out in the 9th in Game 5? And the second part of this question is, it sucked losing as a Mets fan. I wasn't that upset about it because I felt that we had no shot against whoever we were going to play in the next round. Just after Syndergaard, I mean, what is he going to come back? Game 3, series could be over by then. But go ahead. What was your take on those?
I was actually good with it because I thought Syndergaard was kind of motoring at the end there. He had a hard hit ball in the 6th inning that Granderson made that great catch on.
Yeah, he was laboring a little bit.
Yeah, he was laboring, and I didn't like you put 2 guys on in that 7th inning, and he kind of worked to get out of that. Couple that with he's well over 100 pitches. I guess that there's the move. There's nothing you can do there. I think at that point you got to go with your Reed, Familia, and Terry's been sticking by that all year. Even in days where I was mad during the regular season, where I thought he was going to break Addison Reed's arm, he pitched Addison Reed all the time, no matter what. Yeah. And Familia too, if you think about it, a lot of Familia innings logged in there too. But I guess it's going to happen in a playoff push. But I would have gone there. I don't have any problem with Terry doing that. I thought that was the right move.
All right, now we're going to go to the American League wild card.
Wait, Lou, right before you do that, good question. I actually thought about this too because you brought it up when you said that, you're not like devastated by the Mets loss. You kind of, because I agree. I think a lot of people didn't expect much, right? But think about this, because I thought about this the other day. A lot of people have talked about the injuries the Mets have had this year, right? And it's true. To get to where they got 87 wins, right, without losing Harvey early in the year, which is devastating. They had, David Wright obviously goes out early, Lucas Duda, all that. The thing is, I actually thought of all the injuries they had, the only ones that mattered to me were Harvey, because obviously he's a big ace. But I thought about it, and it wouldn't have mattered now anyway because of the, Bumgarner, the way he pitched in that game. But I think losing Jacob deGrom, that really killed it for me as far as doing anything past that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same here. It was all about the pitching.
It was. So I felt like if they had DeGrom and Matz, the way that lineup was hitting at the end of the year, I really think that if they could have got past a wild card game and they could have gone into a series where they were pitching DeGrom, Cologne, and Matz, and then Syndergaard back again, coming back that game, I think they would have given someone a hard time. I really, really do.
Yeah, when I said the injuries, I meant to the pitchers. I mean, let's face it, David Wright is he's got to be a non-factor right now, and I don't think I've had a couple arguments with Mets fans, especially like some of the guys from SB Nation and stuff, as far as Lucas Duda. I think Lucas Duda is just awful. Like I don't think he's an atrocious defensive player. I don't mind having James Loney over there. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I think that's what the thing is, and that's why you're right, because me and you agreed on that. The pitching injuries were the killer because a lot of people probably think, well, they had the only non-pitching injury that hurt this team was when Cespedes missed like 10 games and they almost got eliminated. That was it. But when he came back, you saw how everything picked back up, and they survived. The lineup could survive with like David White. We didn't expect anything from all year anyway. If anything, Reyes ended up being better at third base for us, and then Loney's a good defense. Loney had a good season, I thought. He was a good defensive player. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. He's not going to hit homers, but yeah. So it bothers me. We hear it a lot out there that people blamed a lot of the Mets injuries on the bad season, but it's Harvey and then later on and Matz and DeGrom. That's it. Other than that, a lot of the day I don't want to hear about David Wright and Lagares and Conforto was an injury, he just sucked. So that was a bit skewered. So
all right, now let's go on to the American League and what might be the worst bit of managing I've seen in a long time, and I don't like really playing armchair quarterback or Monday morning quarterback, whatever it's called, but that game, like to have Zach Britton he's not only the best reliever in baseball this season, although Andrew Miller might disagree with you, but as long as he's not only the best reliever in baseball this season, he's the best pitcher on the Orioles staff.
Yeah.
The best pitcher on the Orioles staff, and he doesn't get in the game. And I understand, you want to save him for a safe situation, but in a winner take all game, there's no tomorrows. You got you can't bring a ball first of all, Ubaldo Jimenez, he shouldn't even be in the majors anymore. He should not even be on a team. The guy, he's awful. He had one great season in Colorado, another good season in Colorado, and one decent season in Cleveland, and the entire rest of his career, he's got a losing record and a 5 ERA. Yeah, and it's 10 seasons.
Agree. He was a serviceable fifth starter for them this year in that kind of role where you kind of plug him in there every fight. He was on and off at times, but to get in there, and the thing with that is, Buck's a good manager. It's tough. I actually felt for him because that became a really, really, really tough spot because on the road, you want to save your closer, obviously. Like you said, I thought he got away with it the inning before that.
Right.
I would have probably put in Britton at that point. He got away with that, which is amazing. But credit to him because it's kind of like saving that last bullet for when you really, really need it. Yeah. And he got through it there. All right, I would have brought him in there. But by the time you get to where that situation was there, the matchup at that point you got to forget about a save situation and getting to a bottom of an inning with a lead. At that point, you got Encarnacion up against a guy that just doesn't throw hard anymore. He's not a great pitcher. That was a terrible matchup. I'm pretty much sure you bring in Britton there, even with runners on base, he probably gets out of that inning, and then you ride your Britton card there. You know what? You lose that game later on, the 13th inning or something off an Ubaldo Jimenez after you've used Britton, so be it. That's baseball. But to let Ubaldo Jimenez, with your season on the line and the winning run at second base, pitch to Encarnacion there is, I think Bud just lost. The Bud got cocky. Let's just say it. I mean, Buck got cocky. Buck got cocky thinking, I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to have a situation later on where Britton's going to get me a 3-out save. Ridiculous.
It's awful, and I'm gonna have to disagree with you on the serviceable fifth starter for Ubaldo Jimenez. He was 8-12 with a 5.44 ERA and a 1.56 WHIP this year. I mean,
that's not serviceable. Those are great American League numbers.
It's atrocious, dude. I mean.
I feel bad if I was an Oriole fan. I know if Terry Collins did something like that, I'd probably petition outside of Citi Field, praying that he just gets fired, because that's probably one of the worst managerial decisions you'll see. And it's a combination of cockiness, bad managing, and just losing your head in the moment. And that's the thing. You know what's funny? Lou, you talk about it. The postseason, managing in the postseason is so much different. It's completely different. You see a guy like a Dave Roberts. Yes, you know what? It's so much more about feel. And that's why a guy like a Terry Francona or someone like that, they just, it's a feel. Hey, I want to bring Andrew Miller here in the 7th inning. That's not what he's usually done, but that's my gut feeling. I feel this, and I can get out of here and mix and match my bullpen this way. I'm just gonna do it.
He's the best manager in baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that he's using Andrew Miller, he already had a quality closer, and instead of just doing traditionally, what everybody thought he was going to do, was put Miller in the 9th and Cody Allen in the 8th. He's got a high leverage situation. Miller goes in, and he still has a good closer. I like them a lot, but
that's exactly what you got to do. And the thing is, but what I was going to say is, you see these guys that come out here, and they try to manage by the book. You bring in a lefty righty matchup, like what Roberts did yesterday. Daniel Murphy, but brings in his left. You sometimes you got to pitch your pitchers where you feel is the best spot, and not go by the book and be more of a field manager. And that's where you separate great managers from guys that have mistakes like that. It's amazing. It's amazing when managing in the postseason. It's nothing like the regular season. Regular season, you can get away with whatever. That you can lose a game with leaving Britton in the in the bullpen. And
there's always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow,
and there's not always tomorrow in the postseason. And we're gonna go from that game. Even though one thing I do want to bring up before we move on, because that I think gets lost in Bud Selig. Oh man, Buck Showalter's. I know
you might have been managing that game. I think Bud came in to guest manage that.
It was a tie. But lost in all of that is the fact that the Orioles didn't hit past the 6th inning. Their bats were cold, and the Blue Jays pitching, I think it was very underestimated. I underestimated it, and they've caught fire. And we're gonna go right there to the next series, which I think is the most disappointing series. Although that Red Sox series is pretty disappointing too for a lot of people, but the most disappointing series has to be Texas-Baltimore. And let me get this out of the way right now and say this, and tell me if you agree with me, is that stop calling the Texas Blue Jays thing a rivalry. They beat you last year. They beat you this year. And outside of the one punch in the face of, Jose Bautista, which he ate, by the way. The guy took a punch in the face and didn't even drop. So, I mean, it's not a rivalry, man. That Texas didn't even show up.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they got swept. I don't know. That's the shocker to me. I wasn't that high on Toronto. I mean, Troy Tulowitzki's getting hot at the right time. They're pitching great. I mean, they got a shot.
Yeah, and it's funny. Did you see that banner that someone had in the stands there, where it said, "I'd rather get punched in May than get knocked out in October"?
Nah.
It's a great banner, and it kind of makes sense. And you're 100% right. You think about Baltimore, even Boston, Toronto. They all battled for that division. Boston had the best lineup at the end of the season. They were on fire, right?
Yeah.
But you look at how Toronto was kind of scuffling a bit, and their lineup got cold. But right when they are in the playoffs, that wild card game, all of a sudden, now Donaldson's going. Now Batista. Now they're hot. Mm-hmm. And that game, they go into that game 1, and everything's on. You look at Texas on paper, you're 100% right. I thought they'd be in the World Series. I actually thought they're the best. I thought they'd give the Cubs a hard time if the Cubs are there. Whoever's in the National League, I thought the Rangers would give them a really hard time. And it started with Cole Hamels just didn't have it, man. That's the most surprising thing in the whole playoffs so far. Is Cole Hamels got bombed,
And he was awful down the stretch. He was bad in September. I mean, he was really good all year. I mean, he really pitched himself out of the Cy Young conversation down the stretch. And nobody really brought it up because nobody cared because the Rangers are so far ahead. They kept kicking the Astros around and stuff like that. And I was surprised. I thought for sure that the ALCS was going to be Boston and Texas.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing with these 5-game series in baseball. It just takes a game 1 in these 5-game series,
right.
It's so big because then the pressure on game 2 is insane. And you figure, all right, they get bombed in game 1, Hamels doesn't have it, whatever. Now you got Darvish come out and pitch a really good game, but then you got then Marco Estrada. I think he pitched game. Is that him? Marco Estrada, whatever, pitches a gem. And the Blue Jays pitching all of a sudden is now, unbelievable. Now all of a sudden you got Stroman pitching well, Estrada. Well, the kid Sanchez gets hit up, but you know what? Whatever. The lineup bails him out in Game 3. So and that's the thing. Now you got the thing where it's like, all right, Darvish, he's at home. That should be the matchup that wins you Game 2, which you desperately need after you lose Game 1. And he gives up 2 runs in the second, and then all of a sudden he's in a pitcher's duel, and then now the Rangers bats can't hit, and now they're pressing because they're down 1-0 and they're behind in Game 2, in the 5th inning, and that's how you lose. That's how you get swept, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should say I wasn't so surprised that Toronto and Cleveland, and we could talk about them now too. One, I was very surprised that Texas and Boston both got swept. To me, Cleveland looks like they might be the best team in baseball right now. They are.
They got a Royals thing going on, no? A little bit.
Yeah, I think so. That bullpen, they got, that starting pitching is good enough, which is better than the Royals was.
Yeah. And
that bullpen is great, and they can hit, man. They could just play, and I think they have the best manager in the game in Terry Francona.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like about them.
Yeah, I think I overestimated the loss of like Carrasco and Salazar. I thought that really hurt them badly. But you look at the way they pitched.
Kluber.
They still got Kluber, and you look at the way they pitched in those games. I don't know whether you want to call it, Boston. Everyone's saying, Boston just didn't hit. Boston just didn't hit. You look at Betts was terrible. Jackie Riley Jr. did basically nothing. Pedroia wasn't even that good. They really, really struggled. And they had opportunities too to maybe get some runs against those starters, and they never did. And then once they got in the bullpen, man, they never had a chance. And that's the most surprising thing to me, is that Boston couldn't hit the starting pitching of the Indians. That surprised me a lot.
Do you think that with the fact that opposing teams facing the Indians have no idea when Andrew Miller's coming in, that messes with them? I mean, like, seriously, think about it. Up until now, like, you basically know you got to get this starter. You're gonna have him 5-6 innings, and you're gonna be able to try to beat up on some middle relief guys, and then you got your setup man and your closer. But if your best pitcher out of the pen, you don't know when he's coming in. I don't know. I think there's something about that as far as I don't know if it gets so much in guys' heads, but never knowing, like, oh shit, when is Andrew Miller coming in? You know what I mean? David Ortiz comes up with a guy on second and third. He thinks he's gonna face starting pitcher for a third time, and then Andrew Miller comes in. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
Yeah,
I think that has a lot to do with it. Terry Francona, I mean, he's doing a good job. And as much as we talk about Theo Epstein possibly ending the curse in Boston and the curse in Chicago, like, could you imagine if Terry Francona ends a drought in Boston and then ends a drought in Cleveland?
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's great.
It's 1948 last time they won a World Series?
He's great. And you know what? You think about that when you talked about Miller. How many times had we heard, growing up watching baseball, that, saves not always in the 9th inning sometimes. Those high leverage situations. Sometimes you've saved a game in the 7th inning with your 7th inning guy. High leverage situations, 2nd and 3rd, 1 out, you're up a run, whatever. That's the game. Sometimes that's the game right there. You end up in a situation where your closer in the 9th faces, the bottom of the lineup, and that's considered a save. Francona's kind of taken that concept and realized in the playoffs, those high leverage situations that you get in the regular season, the 7th inning, your 7th inning guy handles them. Now in the playoffs, it's magnified. I've got a guy that's a weapon that I can basically bring in any high leverage situation I have. This guy's going to come in, and he's unhittable. So I mean, you look at the way he makes good hitters look bad. That's such a weapon, and the fact that Francona had it in him to kind of figure that out. And then you're like, oh, yeah, all right, you got through 2 innings of Andrew Miller. Well, here's the rest of the bullpen. Here's Cody Allen. Here's Otero, who's a good right-handed pitcher. It just goes – it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Francona managed his way out of it. That Game 1 was so critical. I thought it was a big game for Cleveland, because if Boston wins that, I think they would eventually have kind of found some rhythm and whatever. And they got the lead, and he sensed it, and he said – I know how I'm going to get this home, and
It
did a
worked.
brilliant job. Yeah, man, that was great.
All right, let's. So it's basically the two hottest teams in the American League right now are left playing, and that's Toronto and Cleveland.
Yeah,
So who you got?
it's I don't know. It's like a battle of the bullpen versus the lineup. I wonder if this Blue Jays pitching is really turned around because Stroman's got talent. I mean, we saw what he did last year.
A lot of people. He
an
was a lot
all-star.
of people's preseason pick for a possible Cy Young run.
Yeah, and
I
you
heard
think
that a lot of places, and I mean, it just didn't happen. But
yeah, and they don't have. And now maybe this is a good thing with the lose David Price, and then
yeah,
maybe we see what happens
awful.
there. And one of the worst performances in a must-win game you'll see.
He had an awful season too. Like
That actually really did Boston in. Was not just lost game one. It was a tough game, and the game Cleveland had to win. Then you're Boston. You have to win game two, and now you're behind 5-0 right off the bat. I don't know how you can come back. And then you got to face that bullpen. Basically, I think if David Price pitches a decent game there, they can win that game. But he took him out, and he's been terrible in the playoffs in his career. I don't know why. He didn't have a good year. You mentioned that he had a terrible year this year for his standards. So, but now Blue Jays, you take that, and now all of a sudden you got Stroman and Estrada, and then maybe Sanchez has a lot of talent, and they, I don't know if Liriano's okay. He took a fastball up the head,
yeah,
line drive off the head that day. I had to go to the hospital. I think he might be okay, but he's a weapon that you can bring out, as a long reliever, bullpen, whatever you want to do. That's the key. I don't know if their pitching is gonna hang in. This is a little bit tougher to me than as good as Texas. They have a great lineup, but they have guys like Beltran and Napoli and Beltre. This time it's gonna be. I don't know. A lot of switch hitters on Cleveland. I don't know how these Toronto pitchers are gonna pitch. So that's gonna be the key, but. I think I'm going to ride Cleveland on this one because they got the better manager and the better bullpen, and their lineup's good enough to score runs on this Blue Jays team. So I'm gonna, and I don't think it'd be that. I think it'd be like 5 or 6, something like that. I don't think it'd be.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tough series, but I you know what, I agree with you, and I think Terry Francona. I think in baseball the manager means less than in any other sport, but Terry Francona does make a difference. And I like Cleveland, man. The way I just look at it as they have the best starting pitcher in the whole series. They have the best relief pitcher in the whole series. And that lineup's still slouch. Honestly, like Francisco Lindor might be the best player in the whole series too. I know that he didn't finish the season well, but I mean he's a great player. I think it'll be a series. But I'm surprised. I thought you might be going Toronto, but I'm going Cleveland too. I think Cleveland's going to make it to the World Series, and who knows, man? Maybe Cleveland will stop being Believe Land and be Title Town.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, you obviously get a basketball and a baseball championship in the same season. Who's been, and Coco Crisp's been actually pretty decent for them too, which is kind of weird. Like that was a fringy trade they made in the at the end of the year or wherever that was, and you kind of figure, all right, who cares? Coco Crisp, he's a nice kind of guy to have around, whatever. But he had a big home run in that series. He's a good player, man. Yeah. And Kipnis and Lindor, like you said, it's just a bunch of Chisenhall. It's just a bunch of guys that are like,
and they're doing this all without like Michael Brantley too.
Yeah, which is amazing. Really is amazing.
Now, before we go on to the National League, I just wanted. We talked about Cole Hamels really slumping down the stretch, 1-1 with a 5.86 ERA in the month of September. So,
well, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's.
I wonder if they ever thought even of pitching Darvish in Game 1. I don't know if that even became a consideration, but maybe not. You go with the experience. Hamels pitched a ton of season games.
So, on to the National League now. While we're recording this, we got one. Series going to Game 5. It's Nationals and Dodgers. The Cubs. Let's start with the Cubs and Giants because the Cubs made short work of the Giants. Giants should have gotten swept, except of course they have Madison Bumgarner, who never loses a elimination game,
even when he doesn't pitch well. But
yeah. So, but the Cubs just completely outclassed it. I mean, the Giants didn't even look like they belonged in the same field as the Cubs. I thought
too.
And that's one of the things I think that happens with these wild card games is you have to go all out to win them, and if you're a team that is struggling and maybe not as, I don't want to say not as good, because at one point in the season, halfway through the season, the Giants had the best record in baseball, but the second half they were just awful, and I think they got exposed. They did not. The Cubs are legit, man. They really are. Like, I know that Cubs fans probably don't want to hear that because of the curse, and they're jinxed, and people just talk about 2003 and 1969 and whatever. But 84 is another year. But I can't find a weakness on that team.
No, I think the one thing I'll say is in the postseason, the lineups doesn't seem as potent as it is, as a regular season lineup, but they still got guys that, that can get a big hit. But Javier Baez has been fantastic. I mean, that's a guy that we looked at a few years ago when he was, up and coming, when the Cubs had all that, talent at shortstop and second base. And we were like, let's trade a pitcher for a shortstop. It was Castro at the time, or, whoever. And let's get one of these young bats. And they held on to him. And he came up as a strikeout, high strikeout guy, tons of power, but not really a guy that ever really hit for any average or anything. He was kind of a big strikeout guy, struggled when he first came on. Definitely undisciplined, chased bad pitches. And you look at the growth. They waited it out. A guy like Theo Epstein doesn't give up on a guy like that. And now you look at it, and he's singling. He pretty much won this series for them, I thought, with his offense and defense. He was really, really good. And it's just another guy in that lineup you got to worry about, and it just makes them that much tougher. I know they played good games though. That's the only thing I'll give the Giants that. Game one was whatever, but it really hard to do anything in Chicago. But when they got to that game 3 was good. I thought yesterday's game was pretty good in that sense, and that's the big one. I thought, how are the Cubs going to react to that bad game 3 loss? Is it going to be a problem? And they were down again and looked like they were going to lose, but again, that Giants bullpen, man. I don't know if Matt Moore should have come out of that for that. That's another debatable one. Bochy knows what he's doing usually, but Matt Moore looked good. He'd thrown a lot of pitches. It was like 120. But I heard Pete Rose is so old school that in the post game he's talking about he threw 130 pitches against the Dodgers. He could have thrown another whatever out of here. He's used to guys throwing 150 pitches or something.
He's a clown. Which, by the way, I just want to take a side note. Did you see that dumpster fire of a show, Hurt and Hustle?
No.
Frank Thomas, it's awful. It's
with Frank Thomas and him?
Yeah, Frank Thomas.
Hurt Hustle?
Oh, it's awful, man. It's worse than that new Skip Bayless show. It's just
I'll just check that out on YouTube just for the comedy of it.
Fucking dumpster fire.
But I thought Bochy would stick with more, maybe because his speaking of dumpster fires, his bullpen is a dumpster fire.
Yeah,
so maybe he would have done that. But I give him credit for watching out for the kids, health, and the guy had Tommy John. He's been a physical mess his entire career. Bring them in, and they blow that lead in the 9th inning, and that hurts. And then then Chapman redeems himself, and here you go. And the Cubs are back into the NLCS. When you figure that's a game, if they lose that, now you're going back to Chicago and all the Billy Goat shit comes up, and now you're all a mess, and then you gotta wait. Yeah, Lester's pitch again, I guess, and then it's a big thing. So that was a big time win they got yesterday, because that thing goes to 5. Now all of a sudden the mental aspect kicks in, and now you got to play a tough game against an opponent that's like a roach that you can't really stomp out. And give them credit on the road down. That's the one Giants will rue the fact that they had a terrible bullpen the whole year, and it cost them in a big game there. But yeah, Cubs are good. Cubs are. I didn't love the way Arrieta pitched though. He's one of those that's kind of weird that he was so dominant last year, and he's been
this year.
Yeah, he was good this year, but he's not an unhittable pitcher anymore like he was and all that time. Really, it's Lester and Hendricks. Is good. And Arrieta's been kind of spotty, which is weird because if I knew right now I was getting last year's Arrieta, I don't know how you can beat that team.
Right,
They're just dominant. So I still think they're pretty they're pretty much better than everyone. But I think the Nationals will give them a hard time though if we need to get to
all
that.
right.
But
Well, and we're gonna go there right now with the only series that made it to Game 5, not played yet. LA Dodgers, Washington Nationals. Now, Dodgers stayed alive by throwing Kershaw on short rest. He pitched well. He helped himself out with the bat. But now, what do they do? Like, what do you think? Dodgers are going to be facing Scherzer,
which is not going to be obviously that's not easy.
right?
I don't love the way Rich Hill's pitched. I guess that's who they're going to pitch, huh? Is that their starter? I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't like this spot right here for the Dodgers. I think it's a real uphill battle, but I give them credit for that game yesterday when after blowing the lead, because when they blew the lead, I thought they were finished. Dave Roberts is a novice manager. It's his first year. This is high tech, technical playoff baseball managing. I don't like if you're gonna use your bullpen that way. You got to have a better matchup there for Daniel Murphy than the guy than what he did. But anyways, I thought that was a big time win. They hung in there, and Kershaw wasn't great. He gave up some runs. He was spotty in the first couple innings, but to still lose the lead in that game and then come back and get it back and hang on, very impressive. So they did that part to push it here. I don't know. You think they got anything? Scherzer's so good.
I like what they did yesterday because with pitching Kershaw, because you got it. If you don't pitch Kershaw there and you get eliminated in 4 games, it's why don't you pitch your best pitcher? So they stayed alive, but now they get to go up against a guy who won 20 games with a 2.96 ERA and 284 strikeouts. So I think the Washington Nationals are going to be facing the Cubs. Anything can happen in a one-game scenario, but, it's as good as Rich Hill is, he's not that good. He had a good season this year. He's been a career journeyman, and he
didn't pitch well in the playoffs.
Yeah, and he's not Max Scherzer. Like, it's just the way that it is. He's not Max Scherzer. The Dodgers' offense isn't like an all-world offense anyway. And I like and I hate to say it, man, but Daniel Murphy, man,
he's unbelievable.
That guy is clutch, man. That guy is. I hate to say it because I hated Daniel Murphy for so long as a Mets fan because I didn't think that he was that good. I thought he had a hot streak in last year's playoffs. Even this year, I kind of said that. Well, he's hitting the same lineup as Bryce Harper. But man, he eventually it's like, what else do I got to see? Like the guy found something and he could hit and he's clutch. Awful defensive player and helped us lose the World Series. But other than that,
forget his Mets career. Yeah. I don't want to think
the only game I went to, Game 5, he didn't make an error. But him and Lucas Duda, that's why I hate them. But other than that,
he's hitting 462 in the playoffs, which is amazing. Him and Worth have been really good for that team. But the thing about Murphy's the thing though is he must have found something late last year, like right before the playoffs, when he must have made an adjustment with Mets then hitting coach Kevin Long. About Kevin Long's still the hitting coach, I guess, but made an adjustment about not trying to drive the ball more. He used to just care about hitting singles and doubles, and then for some reason, all of a sudden, he added trying to drive the ball out of the ballpark into his resume, and all of a sudden, that's opened up everything for him. Now he's getting the ball out of the park and hitting doubles and singles and everything, and that confidence of hitting those home runs last year in the playoffs for the Mets, and helping him out, and then now having a good year this year, and then get down to it this year. The guy can hit lefties too, which is amazing. You think you're bringing a lefty specialist in that's going to get him out in a big spot. Doesn't matter. And I knew yesterday with guys on, he was going to tie that game up. I had not a doubt in my mind. He's one of those now where you're sitting there. I thought it was just against the Mets. I thought it was just I got to expect it against the Mets because that's basically what his damage is. But maybe now it's it's evolved now to being more clutch just everywhere. And The numbers don't lie. He's having a great series. I think what's really hurting the Dodgers though is Seager's not been good. He's hitting 167 in the series. Not good at all. They have too many guys that aren't hitting well. Of course Turner is because he's a playoff monster. Apparently,
yeah. Had a good season too, man.
Yeah, Justin Turner is a a good player, man. He's a good playoff player too. It really is. But the difference is that the Nationals are getting just enough out of Murphy and Worth, and Zimmerman's been pretty decent, and Harper's still there. Harper's got a couple of hits, and the difference is that Seager, Gonzalez, Reddick kind of trio isn't really doing all that much here and there. Puig, if he plays, whatever, But I think the lineup is really becoming a little bit of a problem for the Dodgers. It's not very explosive. If Seager and Gonzalez aren't really going to be doing much,
they're gonna have a tough time.
Yeah, and now Scherzer, now you face maybe the best pitcher in the National League in a must-win.
Bad spot. Not a spot you want to be in.
Yeah, I don't give the Dodgers much of a chance at all. Do you?
No, I don't either. I'm at Cubs Nationals. So, all right. So we agree on Cubs Nationals then.
I agree on Cubs Nationals. I think the Nationals are going to win Game 5.
So the final four, let's say, Cubs, Nats, Cleveland, Toronto. First, tell me who gets to the World Series, and then tell me who wins it.
I'm going to go Cleveland, and I'm going to pick the Cubs, I think, right? But I'm telling you, I think the Nationals are going to give them a really, really, really hard time. Because I think at this point, I think they've got pitching. Now, the thing is, if they could have won yesterday's game, that would have been big. Because now you got to burn Scherzer here.
Right.
Whereas they're going to have Lester ready to go for Game 1 and pitch that. The thing is, can they get? I guess Strasburg's out. He's a no. He's got he's got a certain innings amount that I think he can throw or something like that. So I don't know what you're getting out of him. I think that's where I'm just not going to be able to pick the Nationals because the rest of that pitching staff is really kind of I don't know who's gonna do what after we're gonna pitch Ross. I don't know because they're gonna go Scherzer and then Rourke.
Yeah, and Ross is probably what it's gonna be.
I don't trust Gio. They don't trust Gio anymore, right?
No, I don't think so. You can't. I don't think so. You can't trust. You can't rely on Strasburg at all.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think they'd win the series if they had a healthy Strasburg and a solid and like a Rourke come in there, be a third guy, come in and do, because I think the lineup is it's a good playoff lineup.
Right.
Especially with the Murphy, the way he hits, because him and Rendon and it's just a very good playoff lineup. And the Cubs lineup, for some reason, in the playoffs hasn't been scary to me. It's good and it's really good, and they got guys that can hit, but I'm not looking at them like, man, you know what? I don't look at them like you'd look at a Toronto lineup or something like that. So that gives the Nationals a little bit more of a chance, I would think. But I'm still going to go Cubs. Sometimes it's just a year to finally get that far. I think it'd be crazy if they did all this and then didn't at least get to the World Series.
See, that's funny that you say that because I am picking the Nationals, and I'm picking the Nationals. First of all, I mean, you're still going to they're going to be able to pitch Scherzer again late in the series if they have to. But the Cubs, until otherwise, are still the Cubs, and I just don't see how. I don't know, man. We always do this. I can't stop thinking about 2003, like.
You think there's something out there?
I do. I'm sorry. Like I do. Cubs fans are gonna hate me. Like if they even listen, they probably don't. But whatever.
We'll find some Cubs fans listening.
But seriously, man, I can't. 2000. That team in 2003 was so good, and they were 2 outs away or 1 out away from going to the World Series, and they lost to the San Francisco Giants, who were not that good. Like, they were not as right. It was the Giants that beat them 2003. Was it the Giants?
No, Florida, right? Marlins.
Oh, that's right. You're right. It was the Marlins.
And,
the Giants were in the World Series in 2002, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even worse. They lost to the Marlins.
And it had a beat, and with the Bartman thing and all that. But then that, people forget is they had Alex Gonzalez, was like that isn't, I think it was a great shortstop who like never made an error, and that guy made an error in that inning, which is like cursed, like 101. Like, that's part of a curse when a guy who never makes an error makes an error. Yeah, that's got to be in
so
it. Like a Buckner. Buckner is a great defensive player.
So I just can't. I don't know, man.
Did you think like
if they were going up against the Dodgers, I would say that. Like, I'll say this: I'm picking the Nationals, but to win. But however, if the Dodgers beat the Nationals, then I'm picking the Cubs. I'm guessing it doesn't change your mind at all.
No, it doesn't. But I'm higher on the Nationals than I am than the Dodgers too. So I agree. I like, I'll say this: I'm picking the Cubs, but it wouldn't shock me if the Nationals. I think they're gonna give them a hard time. I really do. But
I think it's gonna go 7 either way. I don't think it's
a long series. Well, let me ask you this. This is my question for you. You know about the Cubs demons and all that. You know, the strange things that pop up. Did they get through like a curse hurdle here, where you're facing the Giants team that's renowned for their postseason success? They steal a win from you in Game 3 when you're gonna clinch the game. You have Chapman in there. That had curse ready written all over. Right? But that somehow they found a way to not lose that game when they were down yesterday. Does that change your mind that maybe there's no curse involved in here, or is it still, or maybe it was too early for the curse?
See,
maybe
this is how like that it's a curse, like, to me, because it's like if this was a normal Giants team and they were still really playing well and they were still going that every other year thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they beat them. I could see that, but it's like just enough where to still make you question, because they beat the Giants that win every other year. But the Giants spent, really the Giants were an under 500 team, every month of the year, other than I think it was May and June.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like, the Giants spent 5 months of the season being fucking terrible.
Yeah.
So I just can't, man. I just can't. Like, to me, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't. That 2003 team was so good, man. Like that. I can't pick them. I just have this feeling, man, that something's gonna happen. Gonna happen. I have no idea, but if they get to the World Series, I would consider the curse off, because I figure it's actually harder to get to the World Series than win it. Like, once you're there.
Yeah.
Although that's not going to give any solace to Cubs fans, but.
Well, look, here's the thing. The only thing we got to look at is they struggled against a team that you could argue isn't very good, especially when they only saw Bumgarner once. And they kind of didn't even have Arrieta hits a 3-run homer off him, all that wacky shit, this and that. Yeah. But look at the lineup, though, right? That's a good regular season lineup, but in the playoffs, when things get tight, Fowler's hitting 133, Rizzo's hitting .67, Zobrist .188, Russell .67, Hayward .83. They really only have 2 guys in their lineup who are hitting. It's Bryant and Baez. Bryant 375, Baez 375, and their catcher Ross is terrible, or whoever. And then, as far as batting, that's a lineup that's not hitting well, really not, and it's not intimidating if those guys are gonna hit. You could get around Bryant if you had to. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you get a hot pitcher, you get a Scherzer in there. Even if the national stars, some of them catch fire. You get them in here, that slump continues, then it gets it gets tighter and tighter. These are very short samples that everyone's talking about, and you get in these series, 5-game series, 7-game series. I think that's a worrying sign. I think the 2 things they got to worry about is a lot of guys aren't hitting, and Arrieta's not been Arrieta, and basically, the rest of their guys are hittable, except Lester. Lester's the one guy who's gonna probably be, is what it is. And their bullpen hasn't been great.
Yeah.
That's that's something to kind of worry about against like what you said, a better team. The Giants suck. Let's say what it is. They all right. They have a pedigree. They got guys. Connor Gillespie all of a sudden is like some fucking super. Where this guy can't hit at all in the regular season. He hits a homer off Familia, and then he hits a homer. What is that? A double off Chapman, the triple off Chapman, whatever that was. I mean, this gets Connor Gillespie. So that's the thing with the Giants. They get guys like that pop up every now and then, and you're like, who the hell is this guy, and why is he doing that? But you take all that away, that's a bad team. It really is. They had to pitch. Matt Moore pitched well. He had a terrible season. He had a terrible end of the season. So I think there's some worrying signs there for the Cubs. I think the Nationals have kind of cruised along very, very, and Dusty's a good manager. Dusty will do some crazy things too, but so far he's been pretty good. You get, you have all the attention on the Cubs all year. Dodgers with the West. The Nationals just kind of won that division, tucked it away, and kind of went along with their business. And now they're sitting here kind of not expected to do much. The pressure on the Cubs is going to be enormous too. That's the other thing.
Well, the other thing that makes it a curse,
what?
If they play the Nationals, is the fact that Dusty Baker's the manager.
Oh yeah,
that 2003 team. He not only did he manage that 2003 team, but he ruined the careers of Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood.
Yes, he did. Imagine that. Imagine there you go. You're like
celebrating on Wrigley Field.
They're like,
oh man,
Dusty's back. Dusty's back. And this time he's the enemy and he screwed us over. So actually, I forgot about that aspect of it. I think that's why the Nationals got to win this game.
Yeah.
Just to see Dusty show back up at Wrigley Field and kind of and work some weird voodoo Billy Goat magic on them and mess it up. Well, the thing because you got to remember, that 03 team, they didn't get there. That was a World Series team and they didn't get there. Right. They're having a hard time getting the World Series. Forget winning it.
Yeah.
So they haven't been to the World Series in a long time. So there's a lot of pressure just in this series just to get past it. They got swept by the Mets last year. This is going to be a really, really big deal. And you wonder how much pressure, these guys are going to be under, especially if they lose like a game one. You lose a game one, things get tight. Yeah. Now, you're forcing a game two, and anything can happen. So I'd like to see. I think the Nationals Cubs series would be really, really good. I think it'd be great entertainment.
So, American League, we agree on Cleveland. Did we? Is that what you think?
Yeah, we agree on Cleveland, definitely. Yeah, I just think got something about them, and I love the way they're pitching with the bullpen and Francona and the whole mix.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes left here, and we're going to pick our champions. We've got you have Cleveland. You're saying Cleveland and Chicago. I'm saying Cleveland and the Nationals. I'm not even saying if the Dodgers win because I'm picking the Nationals to beat the Dodgers. So Cleveland, Nationals, Cleveland, Chicago. Go ahead. Who you got?
I'm gonna go the Cubs in 6 games. I think this is. I think this. Yeah, I just think this is it where they fight. There's something about the Theo Epstein and just like he must be the cursed killer or something. And I just think they've gotten this far already. And really, it's really because I think John Lester has been fantastic. I think if they were in a situation where Lester wasn't pitching well and they didn't have Lester,
right.
I think everybody else is really vulnerable there. I'd be very, very, I'd be scared. But I think they'll get enough good pitching in the playoffs. I mean, if they were to get in the World Series and get just enough through their lineup. But man, that would be. I'm not confident. If you're gonna ask me to say I should be. If you look at the way this Cubs team has been all year, the record 100 games, the way they've dominated, the pitching was guys with under 3 ERAs, Chapman, everything. It lines up to I shouldn't even be worried about whether they're winning the World Series or not. But you look at the postseason and like the way you mentioned it, it's a different animal all of a sudden. And now they don't look as dominant anymore. And now it's when you're kind of like, well, look at Cleveland and the way they play. They play playoff baseball over there. The way they got guys along, the way they hit big hits. and the way they use their bullpen. I'm picking the Cubs in 6, but I'm not a confident one about that because Cleveland scares the crap out of me.
I'm all in, man. I'm all in on Cleveland this year. I really am. I'm sold on them, and that's what I'm going with. I don't think even if they play the Cubs, I think Cleveland's gonna win. So I'm going Cleveland. I'm gonna say Cleveland in 7. I think it's gonna go 7 games regardless. But
7.
I think it's gonna go 7 games regardless, and I think Andrew Miller is gonna own that series. He's gonna do everything but start. He's gonna come in like the 3rd inning. Like
he's gonna be like the 95 Mariano, where he's gonna So how crazy would a Game 7 at Wrigley Field? Well, who has the home field? I think it's the AL, right? Then with that kind of ruins the luster of it a little bit, to be honest. A Game 7 in Wrigley Field. Can you imagine that? That would probably be the most tense building in the history of.
Nobody would make a sound.
Nobody would make a sound. Every little hit would be like, "Oh my God!" It'd be a panic situation. Yeah. But at the same time, they were ready to explode. Man, they gotta. You know what? Rob Manfred has to change that. They gotta change that around. They gotta make Game 7. Yeah. They gotta give the Cubs home field. It's only right. They won more games. They deserve it. So. Yep. But that Game 7, no matter, I guess even in Cleveland, that would be some kind of crazy theater, man. So I hope we get that. Baseball deserves that, just for ratings and the popularity of the sport. It'd be awesome to see.
All right, well, that's all right. So you're going Cubs, I'm going Cleveland, and that's pretty much it. We gotta wrap this up. We've been doing this for an hour now. Before we go, I just want to remind everybody you can check out YJ doing stuff on the nosebleeds.net. It's officially called the Nosebleed section. He is our top football writer, or only football writer at the moment, but that doesn't make a difference. He'd be a top guy anyway. Gridiron Weekly with YJ every week. And then he does a wrap up, and he's got a lot of good insights. So the speed round. So check him out, and then
and check out Lou's MVP and Rookie of the Year articles, man. They're really, really good.
Oh, thanks, man. I voted for the IBWAA, Internet Baseball Writers of America Association. I voted. I released. Read what I wrote about my guys. Yeah. Actually, I want to send you the ballot, and then because that's I think we'll be talking about next time after we see which one of us, if any of us, was right as far as our World Series predictions. And then I want to send you the ballot. I want you to fill it out too, and I want to compare notes and see what you think.
Yeah, man.
All right. So next time, once again, this is the Nosebleed Section Podcast, episode 5. I'm Lou. That's YJ. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.